You might be knowing carcinoma of the oral cavity is the most common cancer in this part of the country. In Western countries, carcinoma of the lung, carcinoma of the colon, and all are common. Whereas in country Indian subcontinent, carcinoma of the oral cavity is a very common cancer because of the habit of using tobacco in the form of quid or a chewing form of tobacco. So this is the statistics. Most of them are carcinomas. Very few sarcomas there, and the carcinoma is squamous cell carcinoma is the most common. It is a killer disease, right? Uh, it is the fifth most common cancer in man and seventh most common cancer in female. If you take into consideration the Indian subcontinent, in the Indian statistics, it is it is one of the it is the topmost cancer in Indian population. So this is the instance based on the site of subsites of the oral cavity. Like tongue is the most common in Western countries because alcohol and smoking contributes to the most of the tongue carcinomas in Western countries, whereas in Indian population, the kini, surdi, and other forms of tobacco products that are kept as a quid in the gingivobuccal sulcus. So buccal mucosa alveolus, this is called the gingivobuccal complex cancer. The quid is kept between the gingiva and the lower portion of the buccal mucosa, or gingiva at the lower portion of the lip, and the person sucks the juice from the tobacco because of the constant contact with that mucosa. That mucosa is prone to undergo pre-malignant change initially and later on program to develop malignancy. So India almost 46% of the oral cavity cancers are buccal mucosa, followed by 25% from the lower alveolus. So tongue, when you see the tongue cancers, it is 50% in the Western countries and it is only 10%, less than 10% in Indian population. So etiology, everyone knows tobacco. Tobacco is the most important culprit. It's mostly chewing tobacco in our country, whereas it is a smoking form of tobacco in the Western countries. And alcohol. Alcohol, heavy consumption of alcohol can also cause oral cavity cancer. Chronic irritation, human papillomavirus infection, all these are also the other factors. Most of the time there is a history of tobacco intake in such patients, but there can be additional factors that can contribute to the development. So most of the times it is multifactorial. Other contributing factors include known carcinogens, radiation, malnutrition, vitamin deficiency, immune suppression, syphilis, Plummer-Vinson syndrome, and a few familial or genetic cases. Very rare. These are the pre-malignant, pre-cancerous lesions. The leukoplakia, which is a white patch that cannot be categorized as any other lesion. The right lower corner picture, and the erythroplakia is a velvety red patch in the buccal in the mucosa, and proliferative varicose hyperplasia. The proliferative varicose hyperplasia is a proliferation of the tissues, but there is no malignancy. The disease has not crossed the basement membrane. It is proliferating into the surface of the oral cavity. The previous two are the precancerous lesions, and these are the precancerous conditions. Oral lichen planus, the first picture, then oral submucous fibrosis, wherein the patient has severe trismus and cannot open the mouth because of fibrosis of the submucosal tissue, and siderophenic dysplasia. Types of intraoral malignancies, they can arise either from the epithelium, they can arise from the glandular tissues, they can arise from the connective tissue. Epithelial tissues, epithelial malignancies are mostly squamous cell carcinomas, and a few melanomas can also occur. From the glandular tissue, it is usually adenocarcinoma or adenoid cystic carcinoma or mucoid carcinoma. However, metastasis from other glands like breast, prostate can also occur. Tumors originating from mesenchymal tissue. This is a connective tissue. Uh, they arise from the bone. They arise from the muscle. Includes the sarcoma and the lymphatic lymphoma. What are the symptoms? Most of the time, patient complains of an ulcer, which is not healing, or a growth. The growth has developed from a small lesion and it has grown to a big lesion. So another presentation is a lump, a small swelling underneath the mucosa, or a swelling in the cheek. or in the jaw region. There can be pain, there can be bleeding, there can be ill-fitting of dentures, loose tooth. Patient with the jaw cancers often complain of loose tooth or give history of removal of teeth because of pain, teeth pain. And there can be restriction of tongue movement if there is a floor of mouth is involved, or the tongue is in tongue for primary tongue cancer. There will be ankyloglossia, difficulty in mouth opening if the posterior retromolar trigone area is involved, or if the masticator space muscles are involved, pterygoids, masseter. Then there will be restriction of mouth opening, and there can be difficulty in chewing or swallowing, dysphagia, difficulty in moving the jaw or tongue. There can be voice changes. The patient can present a lump in the neck. The primary can be obscure somewhere in the buccal mucosa, deep in the behind the teeth, or in the jaw, in the alveolar ridge, where you cannot see the primary lesion, but patient might present with a neck lump. Patient can present with the weight loss or halitosis. So this is the clinical appearance. This is usually a non-healing ulcer or a growth or a proliferative growth, and it can be a proliferative or a infiltrative growth. There few lesions can present as white patch like leukoplakia or erythroplakia with a small ulcer inside this lesion. They should also be suspected and biopsied. This is the macroscopic features. Four types: ulcerative type, wherein the lesion destroys the adjacent tissue, penetrating deep into the tissue. Papillary verrucous type, that grows outside as a papillary lesion. Nodular type, it presents a nodule. Serous, there will be a scar, simply there will be a scar type of lesion, a plaque or a scar, and a biopsy will prove it to be a carcinoma. They can arise from any of the pre-malignant lesions, and they can also present with the cervical lymph nodes. This is common for all malignancies. The histopathology of all malignancies are almost the same. There will be increased mitotic activity, there will be polychromasia, there will be pleomorphism, there can be epithelial islands, keratin pools. This is common for keratin pools is for squamous cell carcinoma of the anywhere in the body, and it's the same. It's the same for almost all the sites of the body. So when a patient comes to you, how will you work up? Initial thing is history and clinical examination. It's the utmost importance for oral cavity cancers. If you don't do a good clinical examination, you might miss a second lesion that is present in the oral cavity. You might pick up one lesion, there might be two or more lesions in the same person. So a complete clinical examination and a history as to where it started will help in ranging diagnosis of more than one synchronous or metachronous lesions. And then investigations. This is a long list, but the most important investigation is biopsy for diagnosis. A biopsy can be a punch biopsy, it can be an incisional biopsy, it can be a wedge biopsy, it can be a true cut biopsy, any kind of biopsies. In patients wherein biopsy is difficult or in a posterior location, or patients wherein the primary is not seen, wherein the neck node is present, or the primary is in the oropharynx, posterior soft palate or oropharynx tonsils, then FNAC of the neck node can do the same trick. This is for diagnosis, and for staging imaging is required. It is usually a MRI or a CT scan, and this include the face, neck, and the chest. For all cases of oral cavity malignancies, the imaging should include oral cavity, neck, and the thorax. This is the basic investigations. Other things for imaging, you can use OPG, but it is almost obsolete now, or orthopantomogram, which is the imaging of the jaw. It has been replaced by CT scan. Metastatic disease can be picked up with the PET scan, but it is not done in all cases. When a higher stage 3 or stage 3 are suspected metastatic disease patient comes, then PET scan is advised. Endoscopy is done to look for other aerodigestive, upper aerodigestive cancers, because oral cavity cancers can occur in tandem with the synchronous aerodigestive tract cancer, that is somewhere else in the tract, like in the larynx or in the esophagus. So it's because of tobacco. So tobacco or alcohol, it causes a field cancerization. It changes the entire mucosa from starting from the lip to the esophagus, upper aorta, even up to the trachea, it can cause a change in the mucosa. So the entire mucosa should be examined with the indirect laryngoscopy or a fiber optic endoscopy to rule out other synchronous malignancies. There is some mucosal staining, chemical. These are all used to identify malignancies in suspicious lesions. All oral cavity malignancies cannot be conspicuous. Like there can be difficulty in diagnosing in some cases that arise from leukoplakia. You might think it is a leukoplakia. Some other person might think it is a malignancy. In such cases, staining can help. Staining can make the lesion prominent, and that way you can pick up the lesion for biopsy. Chemiluminescent light, same thing. The light under particular wavelength light, they brighten up, and then you can take a biopsy from that particular area. So the examination starts with the examination of the face. Any asymmetry of the face is noted. Any lump in the neck is noted, and then with followed up by inspection of the oral cavity, starting from the lip to the posterior pharyngeal wall. Every subsite of the oral cavity and oropharynx is examined by inspection and palpation. Of course, oropharynx cannot be palpated easily, very difficult. Tonsils palpation and oropharyngeal wall palpation can cause a severe gag reflex and can prevent you from examining the oropharynx. However, inspection can be done for all areas, and palpation, at least for all subsites of the oral cavity, should be done. Start from the lips, start from the external aspect of the lip, followed by the vermilion. The vermilion border is it's called it's between the mucocutaneous junction of the lip and the mucosa of the wet mucosa of the lip. So this vermilion border should be examined. This is the most common site for lip cancers. Then the wet mucosa of the lip should be examined. Both the lips should be retracted with fingers and then examined. This should be followed by buccal mucosal examination. Again, a cheek retractor can be used to retract the buccal mucosa to examine the buccal mucosa. And at the same time, you can examine the gingiva and the lower gingivobuccal sulcus, upper gingivobuccal sulcus. And with a full mouth opening, you can examine the retromolar trigone, which is the triangular area of mucosa behind the last molar teeth. Ask the patient to protrude the tongue and look for any lesions in the tongue. Most of the lesions are from the lateral aspect of the tongue, and they can extend into the floor of the mouth, or a few lesions can arise from the 10% of tongue carcinoma arise from the dorsum of the tongue, and 10% arise from the tip also. And difficulty in protruding tongue is called ankyloglossia. If the patient is not able to protrude the tongue, then there is something problematic with either the tongue or the floor of the mouth. So this is how to examine. And the ventral surface of the tongue is very important, because many cancers can arise in this area, which is usually not seen with the open mouth. So this is the floor of mouth examination. It's a U-shaped area lying between the tongue and the lingual gingiva. The two lines that are seen is the duct of the submandibular gland, and finally the hard palate should be examined, soft palate should be examined, oropharynx should be examined, and all the subsites of the oral cavity should be examined with a bidigital or a bimanual palpation to rule out any suspicious scirrhus type lesions of the malignancy of the oral cavity. So this is a lesion arising from the leukoplakia. You can see leukoplakia in all the left border of the tongue. There is a dense leukoplakia. Right border of the tongue, then there is leukoplakia, but it is less dense than the left side. And a lesion is arising from the tip of the tongue within the leukoplakia. And when with a normal look, it doesn't appear malignant. But see, now with that toluidine blue staining, it becomes prominent. 4 areas are suspicious. You can see the one is bigger one, and the on the left lateral aspect also there is one lesion, geographical lesion, and on the midline of the tongue there are 2 lesions, smaller lesions. So biopsy can be done in each of the suspicious area and labeled separately and sent to the pathology lab for identification of cancers. So biopsy can be incisional. Yeah, small lesions like this can also be excised with a margin. Whenever you do a excisional biopsy for cancers, you do a excision with a good margin, at least 1 centimeter margin. So punch biopsy, external biopsy, exfoliative cytology. A elderly person comes to you, he's not willing for biopsy, then there is a option of doing a exfoliative cytology wherein you move a slide, edge of a slide on the surface of the lesion, and then smear it on the slide, and whatever cells you get on slide, you smear it on the slide, and then look for the malignancy. This is the imaging, routine radiographs, dental X-rays. Some patients with jaw pain, tooth pain comes with dental X-rays, OPG, or orthopantomogram, which is a visualization of the entire jaw, X-ray of the entire jaw. This has been routinely used previously, but now it has been, I mean, almost obsolete, and it has been replaced by CT scan. CT scan is a better investigation for the bone, and MRI is a better investigation for the soft tissue. So if a tongue lesion arises, you should go for MRI. If I entirely localized cheek lesion arises, MRI is a better option. Whereas a gingivobuccal complex like gingivobuccal sulcus disease or a jaw disease, CT scan is a better option. An ultrasound of the neck can be done to look for nodes when there is no palpable nodes. And PET scan is a investigation to look for metastatic disease elsewhere in the body. Oral malignancy is most of them is a regional disease, loco-regional disease. So most of them doesn't metastasize. However, tongue malignancies are slightly aggressive among the oral cavity subsites, and they can metastasize the lung. And this can be the by PET scans. They can also metastasize the bones. But oral cavity, most of the oral cavity lesions are loco-regional disease. This is the staging of oral cavity cancers. I should. I'm not going to elaborate. Like I wanted to mention 2 points. One is the T stage. When you look at the T stage, previously there was no depth of invasion category in T stage. So what is depth of invasion? A tumor, for example, a tumor arises on a lateral border of the tongue, or say a buccal mucosa. So it it grows in size. It becomes a 2 centimeter or a 2.5 centimeter. When it reaches 2.5 centimeter, you call it T2, right? Because anything between 2 to 4 centimeter is T2. However, if the lesion has penetrated into the tissue of the tongue for a distance of say around 8 millimeters or 12 millimeters, if it has penetrated into the tissue of the tongue for 12 millimeters, then it will come under T3, because depth of invasion, the depth of invasion is a very important factor that has been included in the eighth AJCC staging classification. Up to seventh classification, there was no involvement of inclusion of depth of invasion. Depth of invasion is very important now, because it has been seen that higher depth of invasion is a very important prognostic factor. A tumor that is penetrating more than 1 centimeter into any of the oral cavity tissues have a very poor prognosis. Like T3, it comes under T3. Maybe the lesion is only 1 centimeter on the surface, but it has penetrated 1 centimeter onto the cheek. So if the depth, it has gone to a depth of more than 1 centimeter, it comes under T3. If it has gone to a depth of more than 2 centimeter, it comes to T4A. Okay. So, and in the nodes, I want to emphasize on the extranodal extension. A single node less than 3 centimeters N1. However, if this node have a extranodal extension, which means that the tumor has come outside the capsule of the lymph node, then it comes into N2A. If there are two lymph nodes, two separate discrete lymph nodes that doesn't have extranodal extension, it is N2B. However, if it has extranodal extension on two nodes of any size, it is N3B, which is the highest nodal staging. And extranodal extension is considered as a very poor prognostic factor, and it is the highest staging point for if there are two nodes with extranodal extension. This is the stage grouping for the same the oral cavity cancer. And coming to the treatment, there are many modalities of therapy: surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, target therapy, and off-late gene therapy. However, surgery, radiotherapy are the most important treatment for oral cavity cancers, and they have equal results. Chemotherapy also helps in some cases. In cases of patients who are treated with the primarily radiotherapy, chemotherapy helps in improving the radiation effect. Surgery. Most of the oral cavity cancers come in or comes under the domain of surgery. If the patient is not radiation sensitive, or if the lesion is in the anterior oral cavity, not in the oropharynx, then they falls under the domain of the oncosurgeon. If skin or bone is involved, then there is no role of radiation, because they are contraindications for radiation. So all these patients should be operated. If there is salivary gland malignancy, in salivary gland malignancy also, again surgery is the main modality of therapy. Even in palliative cases, surgery can be done to reduce the bulk or prevent bleeding. So regarding the margins, whenever you operate in a oral cavity, try to achieve a margin of 5 millimeter. To achieve a margin, microscopic margin of 5 millimeter, you should have a clinical margin of 1 centimeter, because when the specimen goes into formalin, which is the preservative on which you send the specimen to the lab, the tumor shrinks, the specimen shrinks. So when you achieve a margin of 1 centimeter, the final margin will be around 6 to 7 millimeter when it reaches the lab. So the ideal surgical margin for a surgeon should be 1 to 1.5 centimeter, and for a pathologist it should be, the histological margin should be at least 5 millimeter. If it is less than 5 millimeter, 1 to 5 millimeter is considered as close margin, and anything less than 1 millimeter is considered positive margin. Incidence of close margin is very common in oral cavity, because when you look at it as a three-dimensional way, there are places where you cannot give margins, like in the skull base. The lesion has reached into the infratemporal fossa, wherein the margins you can give was anywhere between 2 to 3 millimeters, because you hit the bone, and also lesions of the, say a lesion in the lower buccal mucosa, it has not eroded the bone, but when you resect without a bone resection, you will end up with a margin of 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter, because there is bone and you don't want to remove it. If you do a resection in such patients conserving the bone, then the specimen margin will be only a few millimeters rather than 5 millimeters. So this is the surgical treatment for lip. Any early diseases of the lip should be treated with a single modality. Both surgery and radiotherapy gives equal results. However, surgery is preferred except for commissural diseases. Surgery is preferred because lips behaves nicely and you can easily reconstruct the lip. A small lesion in the lip can be resected and primarily sutured without any much deformity. So the volume of treatment is very less, whereas in radiation you irradiate from the level of the ala of the nose to the manubrium sterni. For a small lesion of the lip, if you take up chemoradiation as the radiation or chemoradiation as the treatment of choice, then you have to irradiate a very large volume of tissue, whereas surgery, you can do it in a very small volume, small resection of the lip and a primary closure, or a small Abbe's flap. You borrow a portion of uh, upper flap and then fill the lower flap defect. You can do that, and most of these early case diseases are treated with a single modality. However, some of these cases wherein the margin is very close, or they have LVI or PNI, then they will require post-op radiation therapy. The alternative is obviously EBRT. In advanced cases, T3, T4A, or in N plus cases, multimodality treatment should be used. It should be either surgery followed by irradiation, or you use chemoradiation, concurrent chemoradiation with or without brachytherapy. And if there is any residual disease left after concurrent chemoradiation, it should be treated with surgery, surgical resection. So for advanced disease, all patients should receive post-op RT, and for patients with extranodal extension and positive margin, they should go for concurrent chemoradiation. Concurrent chemoradiation is what the difference between radiation therapy and concurrent chemoradiation is. In radiation therapy, you give radiation for, say for oral cavity, it is 30 to 36 fractions. Means the patient will receive, go into the machine for 30 times minimum or 36 times maximum. So this radiation starts like this. They start on a Monday. For 5 days they give radiation, and on Saturday and Sunday they give a gap. So for this goes on for 6 weeks or 7 weeks. So Monday to Friday they will receive radiation, and then Sunday and Saturday and Sunday there will be a gap holiday, radiation holiday, and the next week again same thing happens. In chemo radiation, what happens is on every the same thing happens with on every Monday there will be a small dose of chemotherapy, say around 30 to 40 milligrams of cisplatin. This is a very small dose. This dose is given to enhance the effect of radiation. This is not a dose to kill the cells. This enhances the radiation efficacy. However, the complication is more with concurrent chemoradiation when compared to simple radiation. So concurrent chemoradiation is required for advanced stage cancers with after surgery with external extension and positive margins, or advanced stage cancers who opt for definitive radiation therapy. This is for oral cavity, same thing, a few changes. Lip is a well-behaved cancer. Oral cavity, other subsets of oral cavity doesn't behave that nicely. So post-op RT might be required even in early stage cancers. However, we try to do a single model treatment in almost all cases, giving a good margin and adequate lymphadenectomy. However, there will be cases that will require post-op RT even in early cases. In the alternative for early cases of oral cavity malignancy is definitely EBRT, external beam radiation therapy with the other brachytherapy. And after radiotherapy, residual disease persists, then we will go for surgical resection. For advanced cases of oral cavity malignancies, again surgical resection with neck dissection is the treatment of choice because skin involvement and bone involvement are contraindications for radiation therapy. And T4B disease, wherein the disease has gone high up to the skull base, radiation can be done because surgery we may not give adequate margins, so radiation can be done. And for patients who are contraindicated for radiation or patients who don't opt for radiation, still surgery can be done. However, the results are not that good. For unresectable cases, concurrent chemoradiation, this is a T4B disease. For T4B disease, CCRT with the weekly cisplatin is given. Alternative is patient can be given chemotherapy, full dose chemotherapy, that is around 150 milligram of cisplatin, that is 100 milligram per meter square of cisplatin plus uh, taxane based chemotherapy for 1 or 2 cycles. Downstage the disease, then patient can be taken up either for CCRT or for surgery. If in unresectable cases patient undergoes CCRT and the primary disease subsides and there is residual disease in the neck after 12 weeks, to go for a neck dissection. This is the classification of neck dissection. Now the classification is either a comprehensive neck dissection or a selective neck dissection. Comprehensive neck dissection, extended neck dissection, selective neck. There are only 3 things. The comprehensive neck dissection includes radical neck dissection and the modified radical neck dissection, wherein all 5 level of lymph nodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are removed. In R&D, in addition, the sternomastoid, IJV, and the nerve to SCN is removed. Spinal axillary nerve is removed. So this is R&D, and in a modified radical neck dissection, either of the 3, any of the 3 or all of the 3 structures are preserved. And selective neck dissection, you remove only selective lymph nodes 1, 2, 3, and previously they are called SOHND, lateral neck dissection and all. Now the nomenclature is you have to write as selective neck dissection, and within brackets you have to write whatever lymph nodes levels you have removed. So there is extended neck dissection wherein you remove other structures other than like fungating neck node. Usually in neck dissection you don't remove a skin, you remove a skin along with the radical neck dissection. You call it a extended neck dissection. This is the various levels of the neck. You might be knowing it. You might have attended clinical classes, and this must be examined meticulously. The extended neck dissection also includes lymph nodes that are beyond the boundaries of the actual neck. See the pre-aortic lymph node, retroauricular lymph node, and the suboccipital lymph nodes. These can also be removed in eyelid malignancies. Preaortic lymph nodes can be enlarged. In auricular malignancies, post-auricular lymph nodes. In scalp malignancies, the suboccipital lymph nodes can also be involved. Even in parotid malignancies, suboccipital lymph nodes are involved. So 1 to 5. This is the classical comprehensive neck dissection. Comprehensive neck dissection, right? That shows all 1 to 5. All lymph nodes in the level 1 to 5 are removed, with or without preserving the sternomastoid, spinal axonal nerve, and the IJV. Previously, they were called MRND type 1, 2, and 3. Nowadays, it is MRND, and you have to write in brackets what structure you have preserved. Now comes radiation therapy. Radiation therapy is an alternative surgery for uh, head and neck cancers, oral cavity cancers, except a few contraindications like skin involvement and bone involvement. It gives equal results compared to surgery. However, surgery after radiation therapy, if there is a residual disease after radiation therapy, then surgery becomes very difficult. Usual dose is 60 to 72 grays in 30 to 36 fractions. That's what I was telling. It takes around 6 to 7 weeks. Only 5 days a week, their patients are irradiated from Monday to Friday. Usually from Monday to Friday, it's the Indian protocol. Usually Monday to Friday, all patients are irradiated, and the Saturday and Sunday is a radiation holiday. And again, it continues for 6 to 7 weeks. Each fraction is around 1.8 to 2 gray. So the total dose comes to around 60 to 72 grays. There are a number of factors that finally decides the radiation efficacy. The difference between brachytherapy and teletherapy is in brachytherapy, you implant a radiation source into the tissue. Like if you have a small tongue lesion, 2 centimeter tongue lesion, rather than irradiating the entire face and the neck and upper part of thorax, you put in some iridium seeds into the lesion and leave it for some time and then remove it. There are rods that can be loaded with radiation sources that can be used for buccal mucosa. A small lesion in the buccal mucosa, these rods can be the rod can be inserted and they can be loaded with the radiation source. That way, the volume of the tissue irradiated becomes less. Teletherapy is simply like what a CT scan does. Like the patient lies down in a couch and he is positioned with the body frame so that the position of the patient is the same each and every day. It is confirmed with CT, and then the radiation is given just like you undergo a CT scan. But here the radiation is too much. CT scan the radiation is less, but here the radiation is around 2 grays per fraction, and everything happens within 1 minute. The entire radiation happens within 1 minute, but the patient positioning, checking out the files, checking out the position, patient has to lie down, and all this takes around 15 to 20 minutes for each patient. So the radiation is only for a duration of 1 to 2 minutes. However, it takes 10 to 20 minutes for a patient to for the next patient to be called for radiation. Post-op party indications. These are the indications. The positive margin, close margin, positive margin, stage 3, 4 disease, LVI, lymphovascular invasion, perineural invasion, and high-grade diseases. A positive node, a single positive node less than 3 centimeter is usually not an indication, but positive nodes, multiple nodes, or a single positive node with the external extension is definitely indication. And a disease at the margin, either in situ or invasive carcinoma. Whenever there is a disease at the margin, you should try to re-excise the disease. But say you have done a resection of the lip, and then the pathologists say that the line where you have cut, you have a disease. Then in lip, you can remove it again. However, in a place like infratemporal fossa, above the temporomandibular joint, you cannot go in and resect it again because it is not easy. After you have put a flap, you have to take down the flap, you have to resect it, and then you have to refix the flap. It is not an easy task. So in such cases, you can give post-op RT. However, in places where you can resect, resection is the treatment of choice for a positive margin. Complications, umpteen number of complications. It starts with the mucositis. The salivary glands get destroyed with the 26 grays of radiation. So most of these patients doesn't develop, doesn't will not be able to produce saliva, so xerostomia. Mucositis, the inflammation of the mucosa. Patient can even bleed from the mucosa during radiation. There can be infection, there can be dehydration, malnutrition. But many of the patients, because of these complications, many patients will require rice tube feeding during starting from second to third week of starting of radiation till 1 to 2 months after the radiation is over, so that mucositis will subside and then patient can take oral intake. Definitely, the radiation can cause trismus because of damage to the mucosa as well as the temporomandibular joint. Other dental diseases, caries can occur, infection of the teeth can occur, skin complication, radiation dermatitis can occur. There can be necrosis of the skin or the soft tissue or the bone, which is called the osteoradionecrosis. Chemotherapy is not primarily used in head and neck cancers for improving survival. It is used in patients who have advanced disease, recurrent disease, or patients who are waiting for surgery, patients who are receiving radiation as a part of concurrent chemoradiation. These are the basic chemotherapies we use: methotrexate, platinums, and taxanes. Platinums and taxanes are the main chemotherapeutic agents that are used in oral cavity cancers. The similar toxic effects similar to that of radiation and other specific toxic effects like bone marrow suppression also can occur. Immunotherapy, this is still in the development stage. Many factors have been developed by the Chinese, mainly by the Chinese, but they are still in the research phase. Targeted therapy, the cetuximab, the discovery of cetuximab has set a standard for targeted therapy in oral cavity cancers. They have improved a lot of survival. They can be combined with radiation, they can be combined with the chemotherapy. For patients who have inoperable diseases, cetuximab plus chemotherapy can be given and they can be converted to operable stage. Similarly, cetuximab can be used as an alternative to cisplatin for concurrent chemoradiation. Prognosis depends upon many factors. Location is, of course, tongue has a very poor prognosis compared to other oral cavity subsets. Lip has a very good prognosis. And stage of the disease and histology, squamous cell carcinoma has a better prognosis than melanoma. Salivary gland carcinomas have a better prognosis. Sarcomas have a very poor prognosis. High grade cancers have a very poor prognosis. Perineal spread, mandibular invasion, lymph node extension, all these are poor prognostic factors. And each and every patient who undergoes surgery or radiation therapy for oral cavity cancer should undergo speech and swallowing therapy, because when you remove a portion of the oral cavity or when you irradiate the face and the neck, the swallowing and speech are impaired. The patient should know how to modify it, how to get their better speech and swallowing. Also, in the post-op period, they should be followed up with the regular tests and the chemo prevention. Chemo prevention, there are not much drugs. All retinoic acid is a drug. Vitamin A, retinoic acid is a drug in high doses, because high doses of vitamin A can cause many complications. We don't usually use chemo prevention as a modality. However, high risk patients can be given chemo prevention, and these patients should be watched for second primaries. This because tobacco causes field cancerization. When a patient have a habit of taking tobacco, not only the area of cancer is has gotten cancer, there is all other mucosa are at risk that has been exposed to tobacco. So synchronous cancers or metachronous cancers should be looked for, and 10% of the patients who are developed oral cavity cancers will have come up with their metachronous cancer in the upper aerodigestive tract. Prevention involves eradication of the high risk behaviors or minimizing the impact of the disease. Primary prevention, that's a patient who doesn't have a cancer but have high risk behaviors like smoking or taking tobacco. They should be stopped, and a diet and health education can help in primary prevention. And secondary prevention is when patients come with the early stage this screening of oral cavity with a skilled healthcare worker who is trained in oral cavity screening It simply takes us 1 minute for examination of the oral cavity for in the time in times of screening, because most of these patients, screening is done in general population who don't have any symptoms, and most of these patients usually don't have any lesions. Few patients can have lesions, either leukoplakia, precancerous lesions, or malignancies, or they can have other lesions like lichen planus. This is all about